So when a young man was 3 weeks ago near Mount Olympus Trailhead, detectives quickly got on the case. They learned very early on that the suspects they were looking for were part of a local violent street gang. Then a little more than a week after the murder, they made 3 arrests: a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 15-year-old juvenile. Now this wound up being the first big case for the sheriff's office since they split with Unified PD on July 1st. Sheriff Rivera, though, she says the Metro Gang Unit remains housed within the sheriff's office and that the experience of those detectives is invaluable, especially in cases like this.
Brian, so the arrest for the crimes that took place here at the Mount Olympus Trail, where I'm currently at, happened to be on the same day that Salt Lake PD arrested another individual in connection to another gang-related incident that took place in the Glendale neighborhood. Now, just like I mentioned, both of these cases, while completely investigated by completely different departments, have both been labeled by officials as gang-related instances. Mount Olympus is a popular hiking trail just outside of Salt Lake City. During most hours of the day, someone is on the trail or in the parking lot, which overlooks the Salt Lake Valley. And that's where, police say, on August 3rd, a group of 3 people were inside a car when 20-year-old Mateo Martinez and a 15-year-old male walked up to the vehicle before shooting at the people inside.
Gang activity in Utah has evolved significantly over time, from outlaw groups in the early 20th century to the rise of organized street gangs and white supremacist groups in more recent decades. While gangs like Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch once dominated headlines with train and bank robberies, the late 20th century saw the emergence of street gangs such as the Soldiers of Aryan Culture, the Tiny Oriental Posse, and the Titanic Crip Society. These groups have engaged in violent crimes, including drug trafficking, racketeering, and deletion, prompting local and federal law enforcement to adopt aggressive measures. Recent federal indictments and the application of racketeering laws reflect a strategic effort to dismantle these gangs and curtail their influence, while programs addressing youth involvement aim to prevent future gang affiliation. In the early 1900s, Utah's gang activity was characterized by outlaw groups such as Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch. These gangs engaged in train and bank robberies, with notable incidents like the 1897 Pleasant Valley Coal Company payroll heist in Castlegate. The 1980s and 1990s saw the rise of street gangs in Utah, influenced by larger national gangs. Groups like the Soldiers of Aryan Culture, a white supremacist gang, and the Tiny Oriental Posse became active during this period. Violent incidents, including deletions, increased enforcement to adopt more aggressive strategies. In response to escalating gang violence, Utah law enforcement agencies intensified efforts to combat gang activity. The Utah Highway Patrol collaborated with local police departments and federal racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations' laws were employed to prosecute gang leaders, leading to significant arrests and convictions. Gangs in Utah continue to evolve, with some groups expanding their influence and engaging in more sophisticated criminal activities. Law enforcement agencies adapted by forming specialized units and task forces to address the changing landscape of gang activity. In recent years, there has been a concerning rise in youth involvement in gangs, with recruitment starting at younger ages. Advocates and law enforcement emphasize the importance of community engagement and preventive measures to deter youth from joining gangs. Programs focusing on education, mentorship, and family support are being implemented to address the root causes of gang affiliation. 12 members of the Soldiers of Aryan Culture, a violent white supremacist gang, face a 13-count federal indictment under the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Federal prosecutors aim to dismantle the gang's operations permanently by convicting and dispersing its members to federal prisons nationwide, effectively severing their communication and influence. The SAC is known for its extreme violence and criminal organization. Despite the 2002 demise of SAC leader Scott Biswell during a confrontation with police, the gang maintained its structure and continued its activities. Law enforcement has linked the group to numerous violent crimes, including a thwarted plot to target Jewish athletes with pipe bombs during the 2002 Winter Olympics. Describing the SAC as domestic terrorists, law enforcement emphasized the gang's dangerous influence both in and out of prison, where it boasts around 150 members. U.S. Attorney Paul Warner underscored the importance of the indictments, noting that, if convicted, the defendants would no longer operate as a group in Utah or elsewhere. The case represents a significant effort to curb the influence of the SAC and other violent gangs, with federal and local authorities committed to combating organized crime and domestic terrorism. A federal indictment unsealed Friday accuses 14 alleged members and associates of the Tiny Oriental Posse, a Salt Lake County-based street gang, of engaging in a decade-long spree of violent crimes. The charges include deletions, carjackings, home invasions, and the attempted deletions of rival gang members. Among the crimes is a shooting in West Valley City, which injured 2 men in a case of mistaken identity. The 6-count indictment, issued by a federal grand jury, charges the defendants with conspiracy to commit racketeering, violent crimes in aid of racketeering, and violations of federal firearms laws. Maximum sentences range from 10 years to life in prison, depending on the charges. The indictment stems from a joint investigation involving more than a dozen federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. Attorney Steven Sorensen stated that the arrests, which included 6 new apprehensions and additional charges for 9 individuals already incarcerated, represent a significant blow to the gang. He warned that young people tempted to join gangs should understand that law enforcement will eventually catch up with them. The Tiny Oriental Posse, founded in 1985, operates primarily in West Valley City and Salt Lake City. The gang follows an unwritten code governing its colors, primarily white, with red, black, yellow. The indictment notes that members who violate gang rules face severe punishments, including beatings or deletion. A related federal complaint charged a 15th defendant, a documented member of the Baby Regulators, an affiliated gang, with illegal firearm possession while addicted to a controlled substance. This case marks the 3rd use of federal RICO laws by Utah law enforcement to combat gang activity. Prosecutors and investigators view the indictment as a critical step in curbing the violence and influence of the Tiny Oriental Posse and its associates. Prosecutors in Weber County have filed racketeering charges under the Utah Pattern of Unlawful Activity Act against 6 alleged leaders of the Titanic Crip Society, a gang that has operated in northern Utah since the 1990s. The charges represent the first use of this act against a gang in Utah and aim to disrupt the gang's operations by targeting its leadership. The defendants face sentences ranging from 5 years to life in prison. Deputy Weber County Attorney Brandon Miles described the charges as part of a new approach to combat gang crime, emphasizing that targeting gang leaders, referred to as big homies, could dismantle the gang's structure. These leaders, prosecutors argue, direct criminal activity carried out by younger members, or little homies, while shielding themselves from direct involvement. Among the 6 charged are the Hibishi brothers, described as some of the gang's longest-standing members. The defendants are already incarcerated for unrelated crimes, including drug offenses, firearm charges, and aggravated assault. A federal jury has convicted Therese Sherrod Smith, a longtime gang member in the Salt Lake City area, on federal racketeering charges, including conspiracy, deletion in aid of racketeering, and brandishing a firearm during a violent crime. Smith, 29, who held a leadership role in the King Mafia Disciples gang, faces sentencing on August 5. Prosecutors used the Federal Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act for the first time in Utah against a local street gang. The case involved crimes orchestrated by Smith, even while he was imprisoned for the 1996 demise of 19-year-old Joey Mira, an uninvolved victim mistaken for a gang rival. Smith's conviction follows an investigation that also led to 9 other gang members pleading guilty, effectively dismantling the King Mafia disciples. Prosecutor Richard McElvey stated the case sets a precedent and signals a broader crackdown on gang activity in the area. Defense attorneys argued that Smith had minimal influence, portraying him as an inmate with limited reach over disorganized gang members. They also criticized the use of paid FBI informants. However, prosecutors presented phone call transcripts and testimonies showing Smith continued to direct violent activities from prison, including ordering hits on non-compliant gang members.
A major federal takedown of white supremacist gangs in Utah, with charges filed today against nearly 24 suspects. News specialist Lad Egan has seen the federal indictments and is joining us live with the very latest on this. Lad?
Ashley, well, this afternoon, prosecutors announcing these drug and weapons charges against 21 documented white supremacist gang members and associates. The U.S. Attorney for Utah saying, unfortunately, that some of these gangs are homegrown and that it's not something our state should be proud of.
Soldiers of Aryan culture started in the 1990s in the Utah State Prison at the Point of the Mountain. Since then, it has grown in influence and pervasiveness to where now it is in prison systems throughout the United States. Very unfortunate export of Utah.
In addition to the soldiers of Aryan culture that started in Utah, this coordinated investigation also went after 2 other white supremacist gangs, Silent Aryan Warriors and Noble Elect Thugs. 11 of the 21 defendants were just arrested on Wednesday. The rest were already in custody. They face federal charges in meth.
Federal authorities have charged 21 individuals, including members and associates of white supremacist gangs such as Soldiers of Aryan Culture, Silent Aryan Warriors, and Noble Elect Thugs, with drug and firearms offenses in Utah. The indictments, unsealed in federal court, follow a 4-year organized crime drug enforcement task force investigation into the distribution of drugs and illegal firearms in the Salt Lake City, West Valley City, and Ogden areas. The investigation, which began in June 2019, was a joint effort involving multiple federal, state, and local agencies, including the ATF. Law enforcement targeted gang-related trafficking activities, ultimately recovering significant quantities of drugs and 15 firearms. Among the charges are drug distribution, possession of firearms by felons, and possession of firearms in connection with drug trafficking. Many of the defendants have extensive criminal histories, with federal prosecutors seeking enhanced sentences in some cases. The investigation utilized various intelligence-driven techniques to disrupt the gang's operations. The unsealed indictments represent a significant step in addressing organized crime and drug trafficking in Utah communities. The history of gang activity in Utah highlights a persistent challenge that continues to evolve. Federal and local law enforcement agencies have made significant strides in disrupting gang operations through innovative strategies, including the use of racketeering laws and multi-agency task forces. While these efforts have dealt significant blows to groups like the Soldiers of Aryan Culture and the Tiny Oriental Posse, the rise in youth involvement underscores the need for continued community engagement and preventative measures. By combining enforcement with education and mentorship programs, Utah aims to reduce the long-term impact of gangs and safeguard its communities for future.
A gang with ties to Juarez, Mexico, one of the deadliest cities in the world. They have been terrorizing OKC neighborhoods since the 1970s. Here are some of the recent perps facing new charges.
A combination of 8 different Hoover Crip gang members have been robbing Tulsa businesses since 2009. But all that has now come to an end. All 8 men are now behind bars and facing federal indictment.
125 Oklahoma inmates convicted for drug trafficking while behind bars and being tied to the Irish mob. And their leader.
Gang violence and organized criminal activity in Oklahoma have been persistent issues over the years, with various gangs like the Hoover Crips, Juaritos, and the Universal Aryan Brotherhood making headlines for their involvement in racketeering, drug trafficking, and brutal deletions. This article highlights some of the most notorious gang-related incidents in Oklahoma, ranging from the Hoover Crips' criminal enterprise in Ardmore to the demise of Connor Huckabee, allegedly orchestrated by members of the Universal Aryan Brotherhood as part of an ongoing gang war.
Well, the court records show Connor Huckabee's murder
of a gang war between the United Aryan Brothers and the Bloods. And the documents add this war has been going on for about 3 years. A gang war, court records reveal, has been going on since 2019, turning deadly in Oklahoma City. The new documents show Connor Huckabee, who had a handful of previous charges, is a Blood gang member. According to investigators, Facebook messages show back in November he was lured out of his Metro hotel room by Danielle Velez. Surveillance video shows Huckabee then get into a truck Velez said she would be driving, and the truck speed away. The next morning, Huckabee was found on the side of South Richland Road. Court records reveal Kyle Morris and Rusty Williams are high-ranking members of the Universal Aryan Brotherhood in order to hit on a Blood gang member. The records go on to say at least 8 UAB members were involved in beating the Blood in a parking lot, where Huckabee was forced to humiliate himself and denounce the Blood gang, and was stabbed by James Selman. The gang then drove Huckabee to this remote intersection, according to court documents, where Jordan Shaw shot him in a rifle and Dominic Selman shot him in the face and left him lying on the side of the road. Then the UAB members came back to Morris's wife at Jacqueline Steiner's house, where documents show she paid them for their role.
9 suspects have been charged in connection with the November 2021 demise of Connor Huckabee in Oklahoma City, according to recently filed court documents. On November 27, 2021, police were called to the intersection of Southwest 44th Street and Richmond Road at 2:52 a.m., where they discovered Huckabee's body. He had been shot multiple times. Investigators reviewed Huckabee's communications, including his Textno account and Facebook profile, to trace his interactions around the time of it. Court documents reveal that Huckabee exchanged messages with Danielle Velez shortly before the incident. The two arranged to meet at the hotel where Huckabee was staying, and hotel surveillance confirmed the meeting. The footage also captured Huckabee entering a white Ford F-150, which matched the description Velez had provided him. The video shows Huckabee trying to exit the vehicle several times as it drove off. This was the last time Huckabee was seen alive before his body was discovered. Danielle Velez was arrested on January 5, 2022, followed by the arrest of James Selman on February 10, 2022, after his phone records placed him at both the hotel and the location where Huckabee's body was found. According to court documents, Huckabee was allegedly a member of the Bloods gang. The investigation revealed that 2 senior members of the Universal Aryan Brotherhood, Kyle Morris and Rusty Williams, had ordered the deletion of a Bloods member as part of an ongoing gang war which had been escalating since mid-2019. Filed records indicate that after Huckabee was taken in the truck, he was beaten by the group in a parking lot. During the attack, Huckabee was reportedly forced to renounce his affiliation with the Bloods gang. He was then transported to the intersection where his body was later found. According to court documents, Jordan Shaw shot Huckabee with a rifle, and Dominic Selman shot him twice. The group allegedly gathered at the home of Kyle Morris's wife, Jacqueline Steiner, before and after the deletion. Court records suggest that Steiner paid the group for their involvement in the deletion, although she has not yet been arrested. 9 of the 12 Hoover Crips members arrested during a multi-agency raid in Ardmore faced serious charges. Each member was given a $300,000 bond with the condition that any release would require wearing an ankle monitor. The group was charged with conspiracy to violate Oklahoma's Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO. This felony charge alleged that they, along with other co-conspirators, both known and unknown, conspired as members of the Hoover Crips gang of Ardmore to violate racketeering laws by participating in organized criminal activity. The indictment detailed the structure and initiation process of the Hoover Crips gang. Prospective members are required to put in work by committing various crimes before being initiated into the gang. These crimes typically include assault, witness intimidation, drug distribution, drive-by shootings, possession of firearms during the commission of felonies, armed robbery, and burglary. Once deemed eligible, new recruits undergo a violent initiation ritual known as being jumped in, where several existing gang members physically assault them to test their toughness and commitment. After initiation, members are expected to continue engaging in criminal activities to acquire weapons, defend the gang, and further its reputation. The gang's violent reputation serves to intimidate other gangs in the local community, making witnesses less likely to cooperate with law enforcement or testify in court. Failure to participate in criminal activity or follow gang orders results in internal discipline, known as court. Senior members of the gang preside over these sessions, where disobedient members face physical punishment, loss of status, or expulsion from the gang. Maintaining a strict code of silence is also mandatory, and members are expected not to cooperate with law enforcement, even when they are victims of crimes. In such cases, the gang handles revenge internally. The documents also reveal that senior Hoover Crips members routinely examine court records from Carter County to identify individuals who might be cooperating with authorities.
125 Oklahoma inmates convicted for drug trafficking while behind bars and being tied to the Irish mob. And their leader, investigators say it is David Postel, the brother of Gilbert Postel, who was just put to death in the state of Oklahoma for several years. David Postel also sentenced to life in prison for his roles in those. Over the past 5 years, several law enforcement agencies performed wiretaps on phones that inmates smuggled into prison.
A 5-year statewide investigation into the criminal operations of the Irish mob gang, an Oklahoma-based prison gang, has led to the conviction of 125 defendants across multiple federal cases. Among those convicted were more than a dozen high-ranking incarcerated members of the gang. The 125 convicted Irish mob members and associates faced charges that included drug trafficking, drug conspiracy, money laundering, witness retaliation, witness tampering, maintaining drug premises, illegal firearms possession, and drug possession, among others. One defendant received a life sentence, while 113 others were collectively sentenced to over 1,350 years in federal prison. 7 lower-level defendants were sentenced to a total of 33 years probation in federal court, while 2 others received 15-year deferred sentences in state court. 2 defendants are still awaiting sentencing. Notable defendants include David Postel, 39, the head of the Irish mob, who ran a large-scale drug trafficking ring from a maximum security prison cell using contraband phones. He was found responsible for distributing over 270 kilograms and was sentenced to life in federal prison. Chad Hudson, 41, who led the Irish mob before Postel, was responsible for distributing kilograms from within prison. Hudson was sentenced to 348 months in federal prison. Zachary Clark, 31, an Irish mob member, distributed kilograms while incarcerated. He also repeatedly attempted to intimidate witnesses, leading to a 480-month federal prison sentence. Aaron Keith, 40, another Irish mob member, was convicted of conspiracy to distribute and was involved in acts of violence, including the stabbing of a suspected gang informant. Keith was sentenced to 480 months in federal prison. Rugilio Velasquez, 44, a drug supplier for the Irish mob, was convicted of drug trafficking and money laundering. Upon his arrest, over 100 firearms were found in his possession, with evidence linking him to trafficking firearms to Mexico and an attempted deletion. Velasquez was sentenced to 310 months in federal prison. Nico Davis, 30, and Richard Coker, 39, were implicated in violent criminal activities. Davis was arrested for attempting to pistol whip someone on Coker's orders in exchange for drugs. Davis was sentenced to 84 months, while Coker received 360 months for his role in the drug conspiracy. Jade Nichols, 26, was convicted of multiple crimes, including unlawful possession of a firearm and ammunition, witness tampering, and witness retaliation. Nichols, along with Chad Clark, 36, assaulted a cooperating defendant, and both are awaiting sentencing. The investigation also uncovered Irish mob connections to a Mexican-based drug supplier, drug couriers, money launderers, and even 2 state prison guards who were involved in the gang's operations. Throughout the investigation, Irish mob members made death threats against 2 prosecutors, forcing law enforcement to implement heightened security measures. The use of wiretaps also allowed authorities to prevent dozens of potential violent acts, including shootings, kidnappings, and assaults.
Well, Scott, police say all 8 men are Hoover Crip gang members, and they robbed banks, pharmacies, and credit unions, including the largest bank heist in Tulsa history. Investigators say they were organized, professional takeover-type robberies that were always dangerous. Last September's robbery of this Tulsa Municipal Employees Federal Credit Union was the largest in Tulsa's history when the suspects made off with $170,000. The men went in wearing masks, carrying guns, shouting orders, jumping over the counter, even fired a shot near a teller that broke a glass partition before they headed for the vault. Police say a combination of 8 different Hoover Crip gang members had been robbing Tulsa businesses since 2009. But all that has now come to an end. All 8 men are now behind bars and facing federal indictments. Police say the robberies often involve 2, 3, or 4 of the gang members at a time. They They say they robbed the IBC Bank at 42nd and South Garnett in August of 2009, as well as the Dooley Pharmacy in West Tulsa in February of 2010. And the T. Roy Barnes Pharmacy, the Metro Pharmacy, both times using stolen cars as their getaways, always demanding not just money, but also drugs. And finally, they say the men robbed the Arvest Bank at 218 South Memorial in November of last year. Robbery detectives say they haven't seen anything like this crew in decades.
Tulsa police have arrested 8 gang members accused of carrying out a series of highly violent robberies. The arrests come after a year-long investigation involving the Tulsa Police Robbery Unit, the FBI, and the Northern Oklahoma Violent Fugitive Task Force. Authorities confirmed that all 8 men are affiliated with the Hoover Crips gang and have been involved in robbing banks, pharmacies, and credit unions. The string of crimes includes the largest bank robbery in Tulsa's history. Investigators describe the robberies as highly organized and dangerous, resembling professional takeover operations. One of the most significant heists occurred last September at the Tulsa Municipal Employees Federal Credit Union, where the suspects stole $170,000, marking the largest robbery in the city's history. During the raid, the masked men, armed with guns, stormed the building, issued threats, and even fired a shot that shattered a glass partition near a teller before they accessed the vault. In September 2011, a related incident saw a thief firing a shot during the robbery of a Tulsa credit union. According to law enforcement, the 8 Hoover Crip members have been terrorizing businesses across Tulsa since 2009, but their crime spree has now come to an end with their arrests and federal indictments. "This is a great day for the people of Tulsa," said Sergeant Brandon Watkins of the Tulsa Police Department. These individuals have been extremely active since 2009, committing numerous violent robberies. Police noted that the robberies often involved 2 to 4 gang members working together.
Also tonight, prosecutors slapped 30 gang members with racketeering charges as police exposed one of the most violent street gangs in Oklahoma City.
With more than 230 members, the Juaritos make up the 3rd largest Hispanic gang here in the city. Michael Konopasek spent time on their turf. He joins us now with more. Michael?
Well, Kelly and Amanda, police say there are 2 areas in Oklahoma City that are controlled by the gang. People living in those areas are in terror. They say the gangsters are in complete control. What they say goes, crime. It's a daily occurrence.
The gangbangers have taken over.
Jerry Scott has lived in southeast Oklahoma City for 37 years. She says her neighborhood has gotten worse and worse.
I don't know how to explain it. It's just they're in control. When the dark comes, you get in the house.
She's talking about the Juaritos, a gang with ties to Juarez, Mexico, one of the deadliest cities in the world. They have been terrorizing OKC neighborhoods since the 1970s. Here are some of the recent perps facing new charges. Police say these men and their gang buddies have saturated 2 distinct areas of OKC. The first, the top of the town, from Southeast 15th to Southeast 25th and South High Avenue to I-35. The second, West Side, from Northwest 16th to Main and I-44 to Western.
Prosecutors have charged 30 alleged gang members with racketeering, as authorities uncovered one of Oklahoma City's most violent street gangs. With over 230 members, the Juaritos are considered the 3rd largest Hispanic gang in the city. According to police, the gang has taken control of 2 areas in Oklahoma City, leaving residents in fear. Locals say the gang dominates the streets, and crime has become an everyday occurrence. "The gang members have taken over," said Jerry Scott, a longtime resident of southeast Oklahoma City. Scott, who has lived in the neighborhood for 37 years, said the situation has steadily deteriorated. "I don't know how else to explain it," Scott said. "They're in control. When it gets dark, you stay inside." The Juaritos, with ties to Juarez, Mexico, one of the most dangerous cities in the world, have been terrorizing Oklahoma City neighborhoods since the 1970s. Police report that the gang has saturated 2 specific areas of the city. The first is an area known as Top of the Town, which extends from Southeast 15th Street to Southeast 25th Street and from South High Avenue to I-35. The second is the West Side, spanning from Northwest 16th Street to Main Street and from I-44 to Western Avenue. "I saw a crime just the other day," said James Hudson, another Southeast Oklahoma City resident. "I saw something go down. Not far from a playground near South High Avenue in the Top of the Town area, graffiti marking Juaritos territory is visible. They did a drive-by just around the corner," said Carla Rodriguez, another resident. Residents in these gang-controlled areas believe the Juaritos hold more power than the police. Scott shared how life has worsened in the neighborhood, revealing that her car has been stolen twice recently. Just days ago, someone siphoned gas from a truck. Police initiated their investigation into the Juaritos in October 2011 after a surge in drive-by shootings.
The men are members of the 107 Hoover Crips street gang. Jennifer, these 4 men are no strangers to the Justice Department. Law enforcement agencies are hoping this will finally be the thing that helps keep these men off the street. Laurel Battle, his cousin Paul Battle, Thomas Jackson, and Gaywan Blades are all charged with conspiring to distribute. According to the indictment, they would use apartments near 61st and Peoria as houses. The gang members had an extensive operation. 2 are also charged with using guns while trafficking. These men are Hoover Crips gang members and have a lengthy criminal history with Tulsa police.
These people have been on the radar. They go to the penitentiary, get out, and continue to do the same things that they were doing before. We attempt to work them even.
Veteran TPD Sergeant Sean Larkin says he's been chasing Laurel since he started working with the department. In fact, Laurel was once charged with it was dismissed after a witness failed to show up to court.
To finally, I guess, since him get his due day in court and on something I think is a really solid case, I'm really glad to see it.
A federal grand jury has indicted 4 members of the Tulsa-based 107 Hoover Crips street gang on charges of trafficking large amounts of drugs. These gang members, all well known to the Justice Department, are at the center of an investigation that law enforcement hopes will finally keep them off the streets. According to the indictment, they used apartments near 61st and Peoria as drug houses to run their extensive drug operation. The fact that they back up their drug sales with violence makes these individuals the kind of people you have to get off the streets, said U.S. Attorney Danny Williams. The indicted men have a long history of criminal activity in Tulsa, with ties to violent crimes. They're involved in everything you can imagine, from drug dealing to robberies, burglaries, stolen cars, homicides, and shootings with intent to delete, said Sergeant Sean Larkin of the Tulsa Police Gang Unit. 3 of the men have previously served prison sentences for drug-related offenses. They go to prison, get out, and go right back to the same criminal activities. Sergeant Larkin, who has been tracking Laurel Battle for years, noted that Battle was previously charged with deletion, but the case was dismissed when a key witness failed to appear in court. Oklahoma's long battle with organized crime and gang violence continues to have devastating impacts on communities across the state. These cases serve as a grim reminder of the entrenched nature of these gangs and the violence they perpetuate, both inside and outside of prison walls. With law enforcement agencies working together on multi-year investigations and court proceedings, there is hope that some of these violent groups will be dismantled. However, the persistence of these criminal enterprises underscores the challenges that remain in combating gang-related violence and securing the safety of Oklahoma's neighborhoods.
Authorities announced they arrested 8 members of the Broad Day Gang based in Antioch and Pittsburgh. Here's a look at the suspects. These 8 men are facing several charges, including burglary, pimping, and murder. Court records show the Broad Day Gang is linked to at least 5 homicides in Contra Costa County. Authorities arrested Giovante Boyd in Jacksonville, Mississippi. Boyd is wanted for the shooting death of an innocent bystander during a drive-by shooting back in March in Pittsburgh.
These suspects, 4 behind bars, 2 still at large, linked to a violent criminal network called the Manor Boys.
Their crimes include murder and the conspiracy to commit murder.
When Donzay Young was found shot to death in Antioch last August, it led to the unraveling of a war between rival gangs, Case, the other ENT.
Young was an active Case criminal street gang member, and he was targeted by a rival criminal street gang known as ENT.
Across multiple cities in California, law enforcement agencies have launched coordinated operations to combat violent street gangs responsible for a wave of gun violence and criminal activity. Gangs such as the Manor Boys, Broad Daylight Klap Gang, and rival groups like Oakland's and Case gangs have been the focus of long-term investigations. These operations, involving agencies like the FBI, local police, and district attorney offices, have led to numerous arrests, the recovery of illegal firearms, and the disruption of gang-related activity spanning from Oakland to Antioch. The investigations highlight the persistent threat of gang violence and the efforts to dismantle these dangerous organizations to restore safety in communities across the region.
This is a case that has impact. People in The city of Richmond and the Bay Area should not live in fear.
Today, the FBI and Richmond police announced the names of these suspects, 4 behind bars, 2 still at large, linked to a violent criminal network called the Manor Boyz. These are photos of associates of the Manor Boyz. The task force is investigating and say more arrests will be happening soon.
I give a warning to the other ones out there that you better start looking over your shoulder because they're coming.
The Manor Boyz crime spree spans throughout the Bay Area in Richmond, El Sobrante, Oakland, Antioch, and Sacramento. The Manor Boyz violent crime spree dating back to July of 2016 to the most recent, May of this year. Discovery Bay woman Alexandria Schweitzer in Richmond. A 15-year-old was arrested this week in connection with her, and 21-year-old Terry Watts is still at large.
2 ongoing investigations led by Richmond Police, the Contra Costa District Attorney's Office, and the FBI San Francisco office have resulted in the arrests of half a dozen individuals connected to a series of crimes, including authorities announced on Wednesday. During a press conference at Richmond Police Headquarters, officials provided limited details regarding Operation Crescent Moon and Operation Big Houses, both focused on the Manor Boyz gang. These investigations were initiated by the FBI's Safe Streets Task Force and supported by the District Attorney's Office. The recent arrests follow months of legal challenges, including 2 failed prosecutions involving alleged Manor Boyz members who were implicated in a Vallejo deletion and at least 2 conspiracies to commit. Law enforcement officials executed warrants at 7 locations in Richmond, El Sobrante, Antioch, Oakland, and Sacramento. Among those arrested were 18-year-old Daryl Vaughn Waters, suspected of illegal firearms possession, 18-year-old David Jones, arrested on charges of robbery and illegal firearms possession, and 23-year-old Deshaun Ford, taken into custody for a probation violation. Officers recovered 3 firearms, along with cash, narcotics, and evidence of credit card fraud, bringing the total number of seized guns to 11. In May, an alleged Manor Boyz associate, DeJuan Rice, was indicted on 2 counts of deletion. Authorities say the Manor Boyz gang has been active in West Contra Costa for several years and has ongoing rivalries with other Richmond area gangs such as Deep Sea, Easter Hill, and North Richmond gangs. The gang's name comes from an apartment complex in Richmond formerly called Kennedy Manor, now known as Monterey Pine. In 2016, 5 alleged members of the Manor Boyz were indicted on charges of conspiracy, deletion, and weapons offenses following a wiretap investigation. However, the case faced setbacks, with 3 defendants being acquitted of conspiracy and deletion charges against 2 others being dismissed after it was revealed that a prosecutor had misled grand jurors with an inaccurate question.
Several members of the violent gang are off the streets and in custody this evening. Authorities say they are connected to a string of crimes throughout the Bay Area. Elizabeth Cook is here with more. Liz?
Veronica, state and federal authorities announced they arrested 8 members of the Broad Day gang based in Antioch and Pittsburgh. Here's a look at the suspects. These 8 men are facing several charges, including burglary, pimping, and murder. Court records show the Broad Day gang is linked to at least 5 homicides in Contra Costa County. Authorities arrested Giovante Boyd in Jacksonville, Mississippi. Boyd is wanted for the shooting death of an innocent bystander during a drive-by shooting back in March in Pittsburgh.
Authorities announced on Wednesday that 8 members of a violent East Bay gang have been taken off the streets and are now in custody. These arrests mark the culmination of a 16-month investigation known as Operation Klap, during which state and federal officials linked the suspects to a string of criminal activities across the region. The individuals arrested are members of the Broad Daylight Klap gang, which is based in Antioch and Pittsburgh. They are now facing a range of charges, including burglary, involvement in multiple acts of violence. According to court records, the gang has been connected to at least 5 deletions in Contra Costa County. The Broad Daylight Klap gang is known to have a violent rivalry with a North Richmond gang that has recently expanded into Antioch. The recent arrests of Darnell Keon Lash, Azel Tommy Jenkins, Daside Kenya Lash, Devancia Quest Sumblin, Lester Gene Curry, Larry Darnell Goins Jr., and Javel Cooksey, along with a suspect arrested in Mississippi, represent what District Attorney Diana Beckton called a significant and successful disruption to the gang's criminal operations. One of the suspects, Giovante Boyd, was apprehended in Mississippi and is wanted in connection with a fatal shooting that claimed the life of an innocent bystander during a drive-by in Pittsburgh this past March. Police believe Boyd had aimed at another individual, suspecting they had stolen a gun from him, but instead struck 47-year-old Andrew Moffett, who was not involved in the altercation. At least 17 individuals with ties to two rival East Oakland gangs were arrested during coordinated raids on Thursday, part of a larger effort by law enforcement to curb the surge in gun violence. According to authorities, those arrested are members or associates of two notorious and violent gangs operating in the areas near 65th and 69th Avenues, as confirmed by Police Chief Sean Went during a news conference. The pre-dawn raids took place in Oakland, as well as in Stockton, Berkeley, and San Leandro. Law enforcement officers served 22 search warrants, resulting in the arrest of 17 suspects, including 2 women, and the seizure of 6 weapons. Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, speaking on the operation, stated, "It does not bring us joy to send young men to prison, but it is a necessary part of our absolute determination to bring an end to gun violence in Oakland." The news conference was held at the Acts Full Gospel Church, situated between the territories of the rival gangs. Went noted that several gang members involved in the ongoing feud had their funeral services at the church. The tensions between the two gangs date back decades, but the conflict intensified in September when Frank Denard, a 21-year-old high-ranking member of the 69th Avenue gang, was fatally shot while driving in the 1300 block of 76th Avenue. His brother, Lawrence Denard, along with another individual, Willie Torrance, both alleged members of the 69th Avenue gang, were previously convicted of the 2011 fatal shooting of 3-year-old Carlos Nava. The child was struck by gunfire intended for 2 65th Avenue gang members who were wounded in the incident. Since 2012, Oakland police and community outreach workers have been pulling gang members aside to warn them of the consequences of continued violence. "We warned members of these gangs that continuing to engage in violence would result in arrests," said Went. "We meant it when we said that. We will not tolerate gun violence in this city." This large-scale operation marks another step in the ongoing effort to bring peace to Oakland streets and hold those responsible for the violence accountable.
More than 50 people arrested, 40 guns confiscated. Today, investigators detailed a deadly gang war that spanned from Oakland to Antioch. They uncovered it during the investigation of a homicide last year.
When Donze Young was found shot to death in Antioch last August, it led to the unraveling of a war between rival gangs, Case, the other ENT.
Young was an active Case criminal street gang member, and he was targeted by a rival criminal street gang known as ENT.
As for Young's murder, police arrested 7 people, among them a father and son, 42-year-old Charles Bolden and his 19-year-old son of the same name. Authorities say the investigation has led to the arrests or identities of 36 adults and 15 juveniles from both gangs who are.
And Antioch Police Chief Brooks said that in addition to the 40 weapons that were confiscated, they took at least 15 more off the group that were ghost guns, and those are weapons that do not have serial numbers, so they're hard for police to trace when used in crimes. Now, both groups.
Police in Oakland and Antioch announced the arrests of suspected gang members involved in an ongoing feud that authorities say is fueling much of the gun violence affecting both cities. The arrests come after a long-term investigation, which began with a probe into the execution-style deletion of 20-year-old Donze Young on Tioga Passway in Antioch on August 29 of last year. According to Antioch police, Young, a member of Oakland's Case gang, was fatally shot by a member of the rival Oakland Ant gang. This initial deletion led to a long-term investigation into the violence surrounding this gang feud, said Antioch Police Chief Tammany Brooks during a Thursday news conference. Detectives quickly realized that Young's deletion was just the tip of the iceberg in a larger conflict between the Ant and K Street gangs. The investigation revealed that several other gang-related deletions, attempted deletions, and shootings occurred before and after Young's passing, as violence escalated between the two gangs. 3 men were charged in connection with Young's passing: Charles Bolden, Sr., 42, Charles Bolden, Jr., 19, and DeMarco Lindsay, 19. The charges include enhancements for lying in wait, making the suspects eligible for life sentences without parole or the death penalty. In addition to Young's case, the investigation linked 2 other attempted deletions to the case and Ant gang rivalry. On February 27, a man was shot in broad daylight with a semi-automatic firearm at an Antioch gas station on Lone Tree Way. Then on March 9, a targeted drive-by shooting on Aspen Way in Antioch left 2 men critically injured with their vehicle riddled with bullets. 4 men were arrested in connection with the Aspen Way shooting: Trent Allen, 20, Keyshawn McGee, 22, Terrion Pugh, 20, and Eric Wyndham, 21. Q was also charged in the Lone Treeway shooting, which sparked reprisal shootings in Oakland later that same night, according to police. Operation Windstar, which involved 27 law enforcement agencies from across California and Nevada, is believed to have a significant impact on reducing violent crime in both Oakland and Antioch. "We believe this operation is going to have a substantial effect on violent crime in Oakland," said Oakland Police Chief Laurent Armstrong. He also expressed regret, stating, "I owe this city an apology that the gang violence which started in Oakland has now spread to the city of Antioch. The extensive investigations and subsequent arrests of gang members in operations such as Operation Crescent Moon, Operation Big Houses, Operation Ceasefire, and Operation Windstar mark significant victories in the fight against gang violence in California. By targeting violent groups like the Manor Boyz, Broad Daylight Klap gang, and the Ending Case gangs, law enforcement is taking critical steps to reduce the bloodshed that has plagued cities like Oakland, Antioch, and Richmond. These operations, which have involved the collaboration of numerous agencies, not only aim to hold these criminals accountable, but also to prevent future violence and offer communities the chance to begin healing from years of gang-related
Red Desert started last year when investigators say they started to see an uptick in violence. They discovered a connection with the Nuestra Familia prison gang and the Norteño street gang. Officials say local street gang members were carrying out the orders of high-ranking prison gang members.
This group displays its affiliation with the gang and also its neo-Nazi ideology through various means. They will often have tattoos that have the letters SFV, representing San Fernando Valley, and also, in their own conversations, searching for victims.
The FBI, come to the front door, open it, come out with your hands up, nothing in your hand.
Gang-related criminal activities have been a persistent threat to public safety in various regions of California, with law enforcement agencies intensifying efforts to dismantle these violent organizations. From white supremacist street gangs like the SFV Peckerwoods in the San Fernando Valley to notorious groups like the Quiet Village Gang in San Gabriel Valley, recent federal investigations and multi-agency operations have resulted in significant arrests and indictments. These operations, targeting gangs with ties to organized crime networks such as the Mexican Mafia, Aryan Brotherhood, and Nuestra Familia, reveal the complex and far-reaching nature of gang-related violence, drug trafficking, and financial fraud across the state. High-profile arrests and prosecutions underscore the commitment of federal, state, and local authorities to disrupt these criminal enterprises and safeguard the communities affected
and
by their
El Monte
activities.
Police Department in a press conference is set to get underway. Take a look behind me. Hopefully you can see these are the suspects, most of them taken into custody this morning. All of them documented gang members, according to law enforcement, known on the streets of El Monte as sicko, snarky, wacky, mad dog, and psycho, to name a few. And all of them were taken into custody this morning.
This is the FBI. Come to the front door, open it, come out with your hands up, nothing in your hand.
The suspects, again, most of which are documented gang members, according to law enforcement, now facing federal racketeering charges under the RICO Act. And this all started after a member of that same gang, El Monte police officers, Corporal Michael Paredes and Officer Joseph Santana, in June of last year here in El Monte. The officers had been responding to a 911 call reporting a stabbing in what appeared to be a case of domestic violence when they say the suspect opened fire. The two officers firing back, killing the suspect.
Federal authorities announced on Wednesday that several members and associates of the Quiet Village street gang, tied to the fatal shooting of 2 El Monte police officers, now face federal charges, including witness intimidation and drug trafficking. The investigation into the gang intensified following the June 14, 2022, demise of Sergeant Michael Paredes and Officer Joseph Santana. Both officers were fatally shot while responding to a domestic violence call at a motel in El Monte. The gunman, Justin William Flores, a known Quiet Village member, was also shot in the exchange of gunfire. Officials have accused the Quiet Village gang of terrorizing the local community for years and maintaining ties with the notorious Mexican Mafia. The indictment outlines various violent acts, including the attempted deletion of a rival gang member and the bystander in a retaliatory attack targeting an informant. The Quiet Village gang also allegedly operated an illegal gambling den in Whittier where narcotics were sold. One of the gang's leaders, Chase Carrillo, also known as Sicko, is accused of shooting a rival gang member in January 2022 after an argument in El Monte. Carrillo and another gang leader, Ronnie Rojas, reportedly shot the rival gang member multiple times, leaving him critically wounded. A third individual, identified as JP, is accused of driving the getaway vehicle. Months later, when a police report named JP as a witness, Rojas allegedly instructed members of his gang to circulate the report, signaling that JP should be deleted for cooperating with authorities. Shortly after, Carrillo and another associate, Garcia, allegedly attempted to delete JP, but instead, a woman in the vehicle was fatally shot. Authorities further alleged that gang members celebrated the demise of the two El Monte officers by placing posters, graffiti, and stickers around their illegal gambling business to glorify the shooter and instill fear in the community. Richard Guzman, another Quiet Village member, is charged with multiple counts of selling drugs during the summer of 2022. Meanwhile, Rojas, while incarcerated in the Los Angeles County Jail, is accused of conspiring with a relative to distribute.
38 people arrested and 21 guns seized.
Those are the results of a multi-agency gang investigation involving Modesto Police, the CHP, and the Department of Justice. Now, we first told you about the bust yesterday. The investigation, dubbed Operation Red Desert, started last year when investigators say they started to see an uptick in violence. They discovered a connection with the Nuestra Familia prison gang and the Norteño street gang. Officials say local street gang members were carrying out the orders of high-ranking prison gang members.
Authorities announced the arrests of 38 individuals, the seizure of 21 firearms, and the prevention of both a deletion and a home invasion robbery following a large-scale gang investigation. The multi-agency effort involved the Modesto Police Department, California Highway Patrol, and the State Department of Justice. The operation, dubbed Operation Red Desert, was launched last year after investigators noticed a surge in violent activity. Their investigation uncovered ties between the Nuestra Familia prison gang and the Norteño street gang. According to officials, local street gang members were carrying out orders from high-ranking members of the prison gang. These gang members would case neighborhoods, looking for homes where families were away at work or school, then break in to steal valuables like jewelry and prescriptions to sell, explained gang investigator Michael Roquetes. While property crimes had the most significant impact on the community, the 38 arrested suspects face a range of charges, including conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, and home invasion robbery.
Christina Gonzalez live on what the U.S. Attorney is calling one of the largest takedowns in the history of the DOJ. Christina.
Yeah, this is one of 29 locations where they served federal search warrants. You're going to see them going into that room right behind us, part of a very large indictment against what they are describing as a local hate group. Watch.
This man is barricaded himself.
A motel manager describing security video from the 777 Motor Inn off Sepulveda as federal agents break into one of the rooms. The view from Skyfox as federal and local law enforcement serves arrest warrants against members of a San Fernando hate group.
The San Fernando Valley Peckerwoods, essentially a local chapter of the Aryan Brotherhood, has for many years tormented these neighborhoods in the San Fernando Valley.
This group displays its affiliation with a gang and also its neo-Nazi ideology through various means. They will often have tattoos that have the letters SFV, representing San Fernando Valley, and also, in their own conversations, searching for victims.
This was one of the largest violent extremist takedowns in LA, this city's history.
Federal and local law enforcement agencies have arrested 42 members and associates of the Peckerwoods, a white supremacist street gang based in the San Fernando Valley, California, on a 76-count federal indictment. The Justice Department has delivered a decisive blow to the SFV Peckerwoods, a violent white supremacist gang that we believe is responsible for trafficking deadly drugs and engaging in financial fraud to fund both their criminal enterprise and that of the Aryan Brotherhood, said Attorney General Merrick B. Garland. According to the indictment, the Peckerwoods, a street gang with white supremacist ties, operate under the influence of the Aryan Brotherhood, California's largest white supremacist prison gang, and are allied with the Mexican mafia. The gang is notorious for using Nazi symbols and iconography, including swastikas and 88. The investigation led to the seizure of large quantities of drugs and illegal firearms. Authorities also uncovered widespread financial fraud schemes, including fraudulent applications for COVID-19 relief funds, such as the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, filed by gang members using stolen identities. The Peckerwoods, operating out of the San Fernando Valley, generated revenue through drug trafficking and financial fraud, including PPP and unemployment benefit fraud. Defendants Sean Craig Gluckman and Maria Anna James were charged with fraudulently submitting applications for PPP loans on behalf of incarcerated individuals, pocketing portions of the illegal funds.
This board shows the 85 people the Orange County Sheriff's Department and the Department of Justice arrested over a 3-month span. The so-called Operation Scarecrow targeted the Sereno Street Gang and Mexican Mafia members operating in Orange County. With the arrests, authorities say they've disrupted the criminal actions of the Mexican Mafia, which operates in jails and prisons. In 2016, longtime Orange County Mexican Mafia leader Peter Ojeda was sentenced to 15 years for racketeering and is said to have continued running criminal activity in the area.
The intelligence gained through this investigation has helped us to prevent a number of violent crimes.
California Attorney General Xavier Becerra and the Orange County Sheriff's Department announced the results of an operation targeting the Sereno criminal street gang and the Mexican Mafia. The so-called Operation Scarecrow resulted in 85 arrests over 3 months, seized 36 firearms, including assault weapons, seized 14 pounds of drugs, Becerra said. Orange County Undersheriff Don Barnes said a 2016 deletion in San Juan Capistrano was the catalyst for the investigation. He said the victim was an associate of the Mexican Mafia. With the arrests, authorities said they've disrupted the criminal actions of the Mexican Mafia, which operates in prisons. The charges in these cases range from fraud to attempted, all with gang enhancements. Every arrest that we can make that disrupts the criminal activity of the Mexican Mafia is effective in disrupting their criminal enterprise, Barnes said.
Take a look at the cache of weapons seized today by the CHP, ATF, and the Kern County Sheriff's Office. More than 150 law enforcement officers took part in the bust of Hells Angels members, including the entire Bakersfield chapter. 7 in all are charged. Among those charges, kidnapping, first-degree robbery, assault with a firearm, and participation in a criminal street gang.
Authorities announced Tuesday that the entire Bakersfield chapter of the Hells Angels motorcycle gang was arrested on a range of serious charges. 6 members of the Hells Angels were apprehended during the operation, with a 7th member already in custody. Those arrested include Alvarez, Villasenor, Soto Sir, Soto Jr., and Zavala, who the ATF confirmed are active patched members of the Hells Angels Bakersfield chapter. Vaughn and Seeger, also taken into custody, are members of the Sons of Hell Motorcycle Club, a sub-affiliate group that operates under the direction of the Hells Angels, according to investigators. During the raids, authorities seized approximately 25 firearms, ammunition, high-capacity magazines, and gang-related paraphernalia. 8 search warrants were executed at various locations throughout Bakersfield. The suspects face an extensive list of charges, including kidnapping, first-degree robbery, criminal threats, false imprisonment, assault with a firearm, participation in a criminal street gang, conspiracy, witness intimidation, and elder abuse. The recent takedowns of gang-related criminal organizations across California, including the SFV Peckerwoods, Quiet Village Gang, and others, mark significant strides in the ongoing battle against organized crime. Through coordinated efforts between federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, these operations have not only led to the arrest of dozens of violent offenders, but also disrupted the flow of dangerous drugs, firearms, and illicit financial schemes. The investigations demonstrate the power of collaboration in combating the multifaceted threat posed by gangs and their ties to larger criminal networks. As law enforcement continues its relentless pursuit of these criminal elements, the hope is that the dismantling of these organizations will bring lasting security to affected communities and deter future gangs.
37 people associated with the South LA Florencia 13 have been arrested following raids on 30 homes early this morning. Authorities say they funded the gang through armed robberies, extortion, and the sale of illegal drugs.
Now, the U.S. Attorney's Office indicted 23 of MS-13's members, some operating from within prison and others on the streets of L.A.
Downtown Los Angeles authorities arrest 28 gang members and associates of the South L.A.-based Eastside Playboys. The multi-agency task force included personnel from the FBI, ATF, and LAPD.
We're taking a closer look at the dark underworld of Los Angeles street gangs.
focusing on 5 of the most notorious criminal organizations that have plagued the city and beyond. From the long-standing influence of the Florencia 13, deeply rooted in the streets of South Central Los Angeles, to the rise of the Eastside Playboys, Miss 13, Osage Legend Crips, and the Englewood Family gang, each of these gangs has left an indelible mark on their communities. We'll explore their origins, the scope of their criminal enterprises, and the recent federal indictments that aim to dismantle their networks and bring some measure of justice to the neighborhoods they have terrorized.
It's a Sunday afternoon car show, and young people have come by the thousands to look at flashy automobiles and at each other. But when 2 rival gangs come into each other's sight, just looking isn't enough. They taunt each other, flashing signs and yelling gang names. One bystander remembers it this way.
It's looking like they were trying to get crazy, but I mean, it almost looked like it was going to stop.
But the 18th Street Gang and their rivals called Florencia say they're 2 separate families, deadly ones.
The 2 most violent gangs that I know of is 18th Street and as well as Florencia. They're scary. They're scary. If they want me or you dead, they could do it.
With ties to the Mexican Mafia and a combined membership of nearly 40,000, these gangs are an army of bad guys.
You get on the roof.
You not finna come stop playing with me on the set. Look. Just got pulled over.
Damn, like that. Like that. Damn, nigga, Frosty, drop the phone, Frosty.
Bro.
Hey, quick, hit the line, man.
Bro. I'm recording, bro.
Okay, it's fine.
I'm not doing nothing wrong.
Okay, you did.
I'm not doing nothing wrong. Y'all pulling me over for no reason.
Relax,
all right, can you turn off my phone? I'm gonna turn off my phone. All right, I'm gonna turn off my phone.
4 men arrested in the slaying of actor Johnny Wacko.
We're diving deep into the history and influence of one of Los Angeles' most infamous street gangs, the Florencia 13. Originating in the late 1940s after World War II, this Mexican-American Serrano gang has left a lasting mark on the streets of Los Angeles County. The name Florencia comes from Florence Avenue, a major street in central and south Los Angeles, where this gang was born in the Florence Firestone district of South Central LA. The Florencia 13's territory is vast, stretching from Central Avenue to Alameda Street, between Slauson Avenue and Florence Avenue. Their influence even extends into the cities of Huntington Park and Los Angeles, and they operate in the Hyde Park area, known for being the home of the Rollins 60s neighborhood Crips. Interestingly, Florencia 13 has coexisted peacefully with the Harvard Park Brims, an African-American street gang in the Harvard Park neighborhood since the 1980s. Florencia 13 is made up of numerous cliques, each with its own identity and territory within the gang's broader network. Some of the most notorious cliques include the Jokers, Malditos, Locos, Midgets, Diablos, Termites, Los Animals, and the Asesinos. These cliques gained national attention after being featured on the TV series Gangland in 2012. But the story doesn't end there. Other active cliques within F13 include the Dream Boys, Malos, Tokers, Midnight Street Boys, Neighborhood Dukes, Bagos, and the Pee-wees. The Florencia 13's connection to the Mexican Mafia is a critical part of their identity. In the 1960s, they adopted the number 13, which corresponds to the letter M in the alphabet, signifying their allegiance to the Mexican Mafia. This affiliation has made them a powerful force both on the streets and within the prison system.
Police say Officer Arroyos and his girlfriend were looking at a home on East 87th Street when a black pickup truck with the 4 suspects pulled up. 2 of the suspects allegedly confronted Arroyos and his girlfriend, pointing guns and robbing them, including taking Arroyos' chains. And after taking the chains, police say Arroyos and the suspects started shooting at each other, and Arroyos died from his injuries.
Today by law enforcement officials involving the takedown of one of the biggest and destructive street gangs in our area. 37 people associated with the South LA Florencia 13 have been arrested following raids on 30 homes early this morning. Authorities say they funded the gang through armed robberies, extortion, and the sale of illegal drugs. Just last month, 3 members of the Florencia 13 were sentenced to at least 35 years in prison for killing off-duty LAPD officer Fernando Arroyos during a robbery 2 years ago.
Over Linwood this morning, the scene of a federal takedown targeting a criminal street gang. FBI agents and LA County deputies raided 30 homes linked to the South LA gang Florencia 13. Investigators say the gang is responsible for the 2022 killing of LAPD officer Fernando Arroyos.
Federal and local law enforcement announced a major crackdown on the notorious South Los Angeles-based street gang, Florencia 13, F13. A total of 37 members and associates have been charged in federal grand jury indictments for crimes including drug trafficking, extortion, and 3 brutal, one involving a man beaten to death outside a bar in F13 territory. The coordinated operation led to the arrest of 23 of 13 members and associates who will be arraigned in U.S. District Court in Los Angeles. Authorities also seized a significant quantity of illegal drugs, along with 25 firearms and $70,000 in cash, all linked to the gang's operations. Among those charged is Chillerino Busy Jaramillo, a key shot caller in F13, who, along with others, is accused of leading violent racketeering activities, including multiple and the operation of illegal after-hours clubs known as casitas. These indictments strike a significant blow to F13's criminal network, marking a major step toward restoring safety in affected communities.
Bro, don't come like that, bro. Don't get that, man. Don't get that. So what? So I'm ready. I'm ready to win. What's the deal? Don't try to act tough, bro. Scared. Don't come here. Push your heart. No. What size you been disrespectful, bro? All right. I'm not cussing you out nothing like that. Neither was I. I just told you how to respect, bro. That's it. Don't come here pushing the homies and shit. I saw you. I didn't touch anybody. I didn't touch anybody. Come here pushing the homies and shit straight up. Or what? To me, know what's the deal? We could do something. What's popping? Or what? Put your badge down there. We can get in. Don't hit me with that. Fucking put your badge down.
Yeah. Let me see the whackouts. Okay. Okay.
TK. MK for life.
Mr. Keep It Up. Out, banging the set, I'm tipping off the pill. Known as big badass, but I be really in the field. Call me Mr. Keep It Hood, I need $1 million deal. Cause all my rabbits coming too, I'm finna move y'all to the hills. Rest in peace to all my rabbits, I love you for keeping real.
Big 35, 5'6", all that.
They trying to shut us down, but you know what I'm saying? It ain't working though. We ain't going nowhere. Boy, they hot.
Ain't taking a loss, I'ma give it my all, deserve a round of applause. Still gripping on the 40 when I write on the walls. Now they ask me how I'm doing shit better than y'all.
War real Eastie like, y'all now, rabbits and flash up in this
In today's episode, we're taking a deep dive into the history and influence of the Playboys gang, also known as Playboys 13, a notorious Mexican-American street gang that has left a significant mark on the streets of Los Angeles, California. Recognizable by their adoption of the Playboy Bunny logo, this gang has a storied history that dates back to the 1950s. The origins of the Playboys gang can be traced to the West Side Playboys, which formed in the Pico Union area of central Los Angeles. Their stronghold is near Fedora Street, Pico Boulevard, and Normandy Avenue. This territory is adjacent to the Drifters, another Latino street gang. The West Side Playboys are organized into several cliques, including the Chicos Locos, Malos, and Dukes, and are known for their deep roots in the west side of South Central LA. The East Side Playboys, also known as the South Side Playboys 13, emerged in the 1970s in the South Park area of South Central Los Angeles. They dominate a large portion of the East Side, with their territory stretching from Vernon Avenue to Slauson Avenue, between Grand Avenue and Central Avenue. The East Side Playboys have their own cliques, including those from 56th Street, 51st Street, 49th Street, 46th Street, and 42nd Street. They are one of the oldest Latino street gangs on the East Side, a predominantly black neighborhood with only a few Mexican-American street gangs like 38th Street, Florencia 13, Primera Flats, and Clanton 14th Street. By the 1980s, the Playboys gang had expanded its influence beyond Los Angeles, establishing subsets in various cities across Los Angeles and Orange counties, including Bell Gardens, Southgate, Garden Grove, and Burbank.
Downtown Los Angeles authorities arrest 28 gang members and associates of the South LA-based Eastside Playboys. The multi-agency task force included personnel from the FBI, ATF, and LAPD. Officers serving search and arrest warrants throughout the LA area overnight. The operation stems from 6 grand jury indictments. Authorities arrest 28 gang members and associates of the South LA-based Eastside Playboys. The multi-agency task force included personnel from the FBI, ATF, and LAPD. Officers serving search and arrest warrants throughout the LA area overnight. The operation stems from 6 grand jury indictments, one of which alleges a racketeering scheme and includes allegations of narcotics and weapons trafficking, as well as the extortion of local businesses.
Gang members were taken into custody in Boyle Heights this morning as part of citywide bust. The FBI and LAPD were among the multiple agencies working overnight to serve search and arrest warrants throughout Los Angeles. The operation targeted gang members and their associates. Authorities say the people taken into custody are believed to be involved in a range of crimes, including racketeering, possession of weapons, and drug violations.
Authorities arrested 28 members and associates of the Eastside Playboys street gang in South Los Angeles. These arrests are part of a 4-year investigation dubbed Operation Down the Rabbit Hole, which led to federal racketeering, narcotics, and firearms charges against the gang. The indictments, including one under the RICO Act, reveal the gang's structure, its ties to the Mexican mafia, and its illegal activities such as drug and weapons trafficking and extortion. In total, 41 gang members were charged, with 10 still at large. During the investigation, law enforcement seized 47 firearms, large quantities of drugs, and $140,000 in cash. The lead defendant, Eliseo Luna, is accused of overseeing the gang's operations and authorizing violent acts, including murders.
Want me to? We could go pour up some mud if you want me to.
I could put you in all white if you want me to.
In today's episode, we're exploring the Osage Legend Crips. This African-American street gang is based in Inglewood, California, and is one of the few Crip gangs in a city largely dominated by Bloods. The Osage Legend Crips have their roots around Osage Street and Arbor Vitae Street, between Prairie Avenue and La Brea Avenue. Despite being in Blood territory, the Osage Legend Crips have made a name for themselves. Their main clique, the Tiny Loc Riders, represents the 92nd Street area. Interestingly, members of this gang are known for wearing yellow or gold in addition to the traditional blue that Crips are known for. The Hollywood Park Casino on Century Boulevard in Inglewood is a well-known gathering spot for the Legends, adding to their presence in the city. In a major bust, authorities have arrested 10 members and associates of the Inglewood-based 92 Osage Legend Crips on federal narcotics and firearms charges. The grand jury indictment outlines how this violent street gang allegedly acquired that white girl, used a so-called convenience store to convert it into rock, and then distributed the drugs throughout Inglewood and South Los Angeles. The indictment targets the gang's leadership and key members who are accused of manufacturing and distributing drugs from the Stop and Shop Market, a front for drug operations located in a strip mall on South Prairie Avenue. After processing and packaging the drugs at the Stop and Shop, the gang allegedly delivered the drugs to various locations, including the U.S. Vet's office and the Social Security office in Inglewood. According to the indictment, some of the defendants, including previously convicted felons, used firearms to protect their drug trade and territory. The gang allegedly relied on violence and intimidation to control their narcotics trafficking, fend off rival gangs, and collect payments from drug customers. Paul Delacour, assistant director in charge of the FBI's Los Angeles field office, noted that this multi-year investigation began after a spike in violence in Inglewood linked to the Osage Legend Crips. The lead defendants in the indictment, Glenn Dwight Love, Big Luck, Dashe Lewin King, Shaybone, and Wiley Venoy Ivory II, Slim, allegedly ran the Stop and Shop, which appeared to be a regular convenience store but was actually a front for their drug operations. The indictment describes how the defendants discussed making the shop look more legitimate to avoid detection by authorities. Gang members allegedly sold drugs by driving around Inglewood, stopping at regular locations known to street-level customers. While many sales were for small amounts, the indictment also reveals larger transactions, including one involving 4 kilograms of that white girl.
Los Angeles police say they arrested 3 members of MS-13 in early morning raids this week at 10 locations throughout the San Fernando Valley. They are accused of shooting and killing a homeless man while he slept at a rec center in North Hollywood. Officers say MS-13 members are also believed to be responsible for at least 5 violent assaults at the rec center just after the shooting.
This morning, a coordinated law enforcement effort led by the Los Angeles Metropolitan Task Force on Violent Gangs targeted the leadership of MS-13, one of the largest and most deeply entrenched gangs in Los Angeles. A gang that started here in Los Angeles, but which has spread its mayhem across the United States and Central America.
We're diving into the origins of the infamous Mara Salvatrucha gang, better known as MS-13, a criminal organization that has become one of the most notorious in the world. MS-13 was born in Los Angeles, created by Salvadoran immigrants who fled the brutal civil wars in Central America. These immigrants settled in neighborhoods like Pico Union, Westlake, and Rampart, where they faced severe racial prejudice and persecution. Initially, MS-13 was just a group of young, delinquent, heavy metal fans trying to find their place in a hostile environment. The gang's original purpose was to protect Salvadoran immigrants from the more established gangs in Los Angeles, which were primarily composed of Mexicans, Asians, and African Americans. Over time, though, MS-13 evolved from a loose group of friends into a dangerous criminal organization. Under the leadership of Ernesto Deras, a former Salvadoran Special Forces member trained by the U.S. Green Berets, MS-13 transformed into a more disciplined and organized gang. Deras used his military expertise to enhance the gang's operations, and it wasn't long before MS-13 began to grow in power. This period also marked the beginning of their intense rivalry with the 18th Street Gang, a feud that started over a personal dispute but quickly escalated into a violent and lasting conflict. As MS-13 members were arrested in Los Angeles, many were deported back to El Salvador. However, instead of dismantling the gang, these deportations only helped spread MS-13's influence. Deported gang members began recruiting in their home countries, leading to a significant increase in gang activity in Central America, where MS-13 had previously been virtually unknown. The Los Angeles Times has argued that U.S. deportation policies inadvertently contributed to the growth of MS-13, both in the United States and Central America.
And state law enforcement officials announced a major takedown of the MS-13 street gang's leadership, alleged to be involved in the sale of large amounts of across SoCal. Now, the U.S. Attorney's Office indicted 23 of MS-13's members, some operating from within prison and others on the streets of L.A.
They say MS-13 members used violence and intimidation to control the sale of narcotics in the neighborhoods that they occupy. They say with this, they're trying to take out the leadership of the gang to combat violence on the streets.
What this investigation has revealed is that MS-13 uses drug trafficking as its lifeblood. It uses drug funds to finance its operations.
In a significant crackdown today, federal and local law enforcement officials announced the unsealing of a grand jury indictment against 23 members and associates of the infamous MS-13 gang. These individuals are accused of trafficking large quantities of drugs and illegally possessing ammunition found in a ghost gun. Today's operation led to the arrests of 17 MS-13 members, who are expected to be arraigned on the 36-count indictment this afternoon in Los Angeles. 4 of the defendants were already in state custody, while authorities continue to search for 2 more. As part of the takedown, law enforcement seized multiple pounds of illegal drugs, 9 firearms, and nearly $94,000 in cash. The indictment reveals that MS-13, operating under the control of an imprisoned member linked to the Mexican mafia, enforced a rule requiring all Los Angeles area cliques to buy drugs from specific suppliers, funneling profits back to the gang's leadership. From July 2021 to August 2023, the gang's drug trafficking activities were allegedly overseen by top shot callers Pavel Hurtado and Eli Grijalva, who managed operations and coordinated with the incarcerated MS-13 member. The gang used violence and intimidation to control narcotics trafficking in their territories, requiring sellers to either be MS-13 members or pay rent to operate within their zones. The indictment charges all 23 defendants with conspiracy to distribute narcotics, with additional charges for individual members related to drug distribution and illegal possession of ammunition.
Well, every side, all sides, Queen Streets, NHPs, we up, man. We gotta take that up, you feel me? Gang. What'd he say? We be having to press this sometimes, man. He know what's happening. 92nd Street, Inglewood Bloods, though. At the 20s, man. Manchester CMT, you feel me? It's the home of it right here. I got my ass beat in this alley by Inglewood PD.
This was my stomping grounds going up.
The 60s and all the Crips on this side, and Pyros and all the other Bloods on this side. They could be passing down the street. You got to be on your P's and Q's. You got to look around. We don't be mean to be in every car, but shit, that's how you get caught slipping.
We got everything in our backyard. I can watch stuff from Darby Park.
We are diving into the history and influence of the Englewood Family Gang, also known as the Englewood Family Gangster Bloods. This African-American street gang has deep roots on the west side of Inglewood, California, and has been a significant presence in the area since the 1970s. Originally known as the Chain Gang, the IFG has a long history, even predating the formation of the Crips. Back in the day, they had fierce rivalries with other gangs, including the West Side Crips, which was founded by the infamous Stanley "Tookie" Williams. The Englewood Family Gang's territory stretches from Crenshaw Boulevard to Van Ness Avenue, covering the area from 77th Street to 94th Street. Over the years, they've formed several cliques, including the 77th Street, Rolling 80s, 92nd Street, 94th Street, and the Ransom Gang. In today's episode, we're covering the latest crackdown on the Englewood Family Gang, a violent street gang that has grown from a local presence in Inglewood to a national criminal enterprise with cliques across multiple states, including New York, Georgia, Texas, and more. Over the past week, authorities have arrested 10 members and associates of the Englewood Family Gang on federal charges related to narcotics trafficking and firearms offenses. These arrests follow a multi-year investigation where task force members conducted controlled purchases, acquiring firearms. Among those arrested is Byron Sumlin, aka Busy, who was charged with dealing firearms without a license. He, along with several others, was taken into federal custody on October 30th, 2018. The charges range from drug distribution to illegal possession of firearms, with many of the defendants being previously convicted felons. The gang members and their associates allegedly used violence and intimidation to control their drug trafficking territory, protecting their operations from rival gangs and ensuring payment from drug customers. The indictment highlights the gang's use of established cliques to traffic firearms and narcotics across the country. Some defendants have already pleaded guilty, while others are awaiting trial. The government continues to pursue charges against these individuals, aiming to dismantle the Englewood Family Gang's operations and reduce the violence they bring to communities. As we've seen, these 5 gangs have evolved from local street crews into powerful criminal enterprises with far-reaching influence, not just in Los Angeles but across the United States. The recent indictments and arrests are a significant step in the ongoing battle against gang violence and narcotics trafficking, but the fight is far from over. Law enforcement's relentless pursuit of these dangerous organizations underscores the commitment to restoring safety and peace to communities long under siege. Stay tuned as we continue to cover these developments and bring you the latest on the efforts to curb gang activity and its impact on society.